Tonight on News 5,
whether these were public or private funds, as far as I'm concerned. And I can tell you absolutely and adamantly that these funds were never intended to be public funds. Not by me, not by the committee, and certainly not by the governor.
The Protocol Fund and the $350,000 Wolfson loan. More testimony tonight before a House Select Committee on impeachment. That's our top story tonight on News 5.
Now, Arizona's first primetime newscast. News 5 at 9:30 with Linda Turley and Roger Downey.
Good evening. Governor MECHAM has a date Monday morning with the House Impeachment Committee.
The governor has repeatedly said that he wants a chance to appear to answer allegations, and that appearance is now scheduled for 10 o'clock Monday morning. News 5's Bud Ginhart is at the Capitol where those hearings continued tonight. Bud?
Good evening, Roger. And there was official word from the governor tonight. Shortly before 8, just after a break in the committee meeting, Jim Skelly read a letter that he had gotten from the 9th floor. The governor had asked that the plans for his Monday appearance be changed. The governor wants to make a 1-hour presentation to the full House of Representatives before going under oath before the committee. Tonight, Jim Skelly said no.
My feeling is that this committee has been set up to present all the testimony to the full House, and I am quite certain that all 60 members will be in attendance. We do not have the facility set up for a committee meeting on the floor, and we will have the meeting here.
For more than an hour tonight, House investigator Bill Woods talked about the evidence he had gathered on the $350,000 Wolfson loan. One of those pieces of evidence, notes scribbled by MECHAM campaign aide Vern Gasser, the so-called smoking gun of the French report, was openly ridiculed by Democrat Jack Brown.
To me, this document is an attorney's paradise if it can be entered into evidence in a law court, court of law. You know, you could just figure out all kinds of things. This would open up a whole new field for attorneys. I can see that they could make cases and win them right and left if this kind of evidence would hold up.
In 45 minutes worth of testimony late this afternoon, Investigator Woods reviewed the trail of paper he had unraveled on the Wolfson loan for House Counsel William French. He listed 7 examples he said proved there was a clear attempt to hide the $350,000 loan, including the way it was listed on the campaign finance statement.
Concealing the Wolfson loan in a lump sum manner as a contribution from Governor MECHAM. And finally, by manufacturing a fraudulent receipt in an attempt to make it appear that the contribution of $350,000 was from Evan MECHAM.
The finance director for the MECHAM Inaugural Committee, Bill Long, followed. He told the committee the agreement he reached with the county attorney's office had that $92,000 raised being used for state purposes, not for MECHAM's personal purposes.
We didn't intend for the money to be loaned to MECHAM Pontiac, obviously, and I don't think that anything in either one of these documents would indicate that we intended it to go to MECHAM Pontiac.
And later on in the testimony, Long said that the money was never intended to be public money, but he thought that using the money for the car dealership was improper. He said it was in bad taste, and he said the people who had contributed that money had been let down. Long continues to testify right now, and it now appears that MECHAM Chief of Staff Richard Burke won't be heard from until the committee resumes tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock.
Bud, is there any talk about when the committee will meet again before Monday?
Well, just as far as we know, Chief of Staff Richard Burke will be here tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. There is no meeting scheduled for Friday at this point, so it now appears that after tomorrow's meeting at 3, which could last 2 or 3 hours, it'll only be Monday morning. And the time is flexible. It started out as 10 o'clock Monday morning. That was the original time that Chairman Skelly asked the governor to be here, but that's not a hard and fast time, as it was said tonight. It could be 11 o'clock, it could be noon. It depends on the governor's option.
Thank you, Bud. That's Bud Ginhart at the state capitol. Governor MECHAM made a brief public appearance today to talk about air pollution, and that's all he wanted to address. He rebuffed reporters' questions related to his legal troubles and possible impeachment. Meacham spent only a few minutes at the Capitol lobby congratulating state employees for their participation in the Don't Drive 1 in 5 campaign. The 3-month valley-wide effort asked motorists to leave their cars at home on specified days during the high pollution season. It's estimated some 13% of all Capitol workers did so.
Another newspaper editorial calls for the resignation of the governor tonight. The Phoenix Gazette devoted nearly half its editorial space today to just the one 64-word editorial. Headlined, "It is time," the editorial cites the governor's legal problems and says it is time to end the agony in Arizona and the governor should resign. The governor has pleaded innocent to the criminal charges and has said repeatedly he will not resign. And the governor's press secretary, Ken Smith, wrote his own letters to the editor, both the Gazette and the Arizona Republic. Smith accuses publisher Pat Murphy of abusing his position and abandoning his responsibility for truth and fairness. That letter was prompted by Murphy's column on Sunday in which he wrote that Smith is preparing to write a book on the MECHAM administration. Murphy's column characterized Smith as being at the high point of an otherwise meager career. Murphy says Smith asked him to retract statements made in the column, but Murphy said he would not retract anything.
A Washington attorney for Governor Meacham says the governor has met with a prominent Nashville, Tennessee defense lawyer, James Neal, and Neal reportedly is considering taking the governor's case. Washington attorney Fred Kraft says that Neal may decide by next week whether to defend Meacham, who faces indictment, impeachment, and recall. Kraft says Neal's only concern is to make sure he has the time to defend the governor. Should Neal take the case, his main opponent would be William French, the special House counselor. Both men work together in the U.S. Justice Department, serving under former Attorney General Robert Kennedy.
Calorie counters, take note. Someone has come up with what they call fake fat, and that story is still ahead on News 5.
And how some agencies are dealing with the hunger problem in Phoenix.
An update on cancer clusters in Maryvale turned into an angry confrontation tonight. A panel of experts from across the country are here for 2 days to hear progress on studying the high incidence of childhood leukemia in Maryvale. What the panel heard at this public forum, though, were the bitter complaints of a small but vocal group. Maryvale residents who say they know nothing more about the cancer risk now than a year ago.
And no one really is out there to help the public, and no one really wants to find out what's polluting Maryvale.
Our children's lives are worth whatever kind of dollar price you want to keep telling us you can't pay.
I don't know how we can have any faith in any of you people. I don't know how we can.
You don't want to move the tank farm. It says right here on page 14, 90% of Arizona's power and fuel is supplied by it, and you'll never move it because of that.
The tank farm Mears cited is an underground system at 51st Avenue in Van Buren where millions of gallons of fuel are stored. The residents insist high levels of the chemical benzene at the farm are related to the childhood cancers. Officials tonight tried to reassure them with word that 3 separate studies are to be completed. The first one on mortality rates should be finished next month.
A second strain of the AIDS virus tops our report of world news tonight. Researchers in New Jersey say the HIV-2 AIDS virus has been detected in a patient in the United States for the first time. An investigation has not turned up any evidence that the patient has spread the virus to anybody else in this country. The makers of NutraSweet, a sugar substitute, plan to market a fake fat. The substitute called Simplice is made from milk or egg white protein. Within 18 months, it could start turning up in products like ice cream and salad dressing. The fake fat is less than half the calories of milk fat in premium ice cream and a fourth of the calories when used in salad dressings. Aspirin can relieve pain, lower fever, and now doctors say prevent heart attacks. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine shows aspirin can cut the risk of heart attack by almost half when taken every other day.
On the eve of the anniversary of the Challenger explosion, the space agency set August 4th as the new launch date for the next shuttle flight. Tomorrow, workers at Cape Canaveral will observe 73 seconds of silence at the exact time the Challenger was launched 2 years ago. It exploded 73 seconds into that flight. Contra leaders unveiled their new bargaining position tonight. When they meet with Nicaraguan officials tomorrow in Costa Rica, They will demand a ceasefire by mid-March and internal political reform. The Sandinista government insists tomorrow's first direct talks should deal only with the mechanics of a ceasefire and not political issues. Meanwhile, House Speaker Jim Wright predicts the House will reject President Reagan's request for more aid to the countries.
Soldiers who have not made it home from America's wars were remembered tonight at the Capitol. About 50 people gathered to light candles and hear speeches in support of servicemen missing in action in Southeast Asia. The organization sponsoring this vigil, Task Force Omega, works to secure the return of remains and live POWs they say are certainly being held in communist camps. Those attending tonight say it's not necessary to have a loved one missing to understand the pain.
Most of the vets don't even know any of them, but it's still, like I said, as a cliche goes, it's their brothers and their sisters that are missing, and it's the love they have for what they've sacrificed.
It's like having your child kidnapped and never knowing what happened to them or where they're at or what happened, you know, if they're safe or what. And it was my relative, I would fight till the death knowing where they are.
My dad has been there for 22 if he's still alive. The government needs to negotiate to get them home, and that's what this is all about. People who care to get the live Americans home. There's hundreds and thousands of them.
The United States government officially lists 2,413 Americans as prisoners or missing in Vietnam. Tonight marks the 15th anniversary of the signing of the Paris Peace Accord, which ended the war and was to bring all Americans home.
Celebrities took their swings today at the Phoenix Open.
John Brixton tells us about the Pro-Am event next on News 5.
Well, John, do the Dallas Mavericks have the Suns' number tonight?
Again. Three's the magic number. 1, 2, 3 in a row, Rod. 2 streaks were on the line tonight at the Coliseum, with the Suns hoping to snap their losing streak at 5 against the Dallas Mavericks. First half belonged to Dallas as Mark Aguirre had the hot hand early. A long bomb from three-point range, and the Mavs led by 7 at the quarter, 10 at the half. Suns forward Larry Nance was a questionable performer tonight, but he played and played well with 8 points on the score sheet by the intermission. Dallas guard Brad Davis gave the Suns fits. He had 15 by the half, but Phoenix came to life in the third quarter, made a game of it in the fourth. Walt Davis got it going as the Suns pulled to as close as 1 point, but the Mavs pulled away in the late going to win their 6th in a row and the 3rd straight win over the Suns. The final out there tonight, 121 to 102. At Boston tonight, the Bird was flying high. Larry Bird scored 22 points in the opening quarter and wound up with a game-high 49 points as Boston turned back Washington by a score of 106 to 100. Elsewhere tonight in overtime, Chicago beating Philadelphia by 10. It was Detroit 103, Indiana 86. Cleveland was 10 better than San Antonio. And at halftime, Golden State with a 3-point lead on Portland. Now, among the top-ranking teams on the college courts, Vanderbilt upset number 9 Kentucky 83 to 66. Oklahoma with a big win over Iowa State, and Florida knocked off LSU by 11. 15th ranked Georgetown in a slowdown game beat Boston College 58-36. Syracuse got by Seton Hall, and tonight St. John's turned the tables on 19th ranked Villanova 60 to 55. Well, they are set to go in the 53rd Phoenix Open tomorrow morning with defending champion Paul Azinger, Hal Sutton, and Curtis Strange among the favorites. All were on the course today, but it was for fun in the Silver Pro-Am event, which attracted a crowd estimated at better than 30,000 at the TPC course in Scottsdale. And a good number of the spectators were there to see this man, entertainer Bob Hope, who was loving the Phoenix weather since the West Coast has had more than its share of rain.
And the water was up to this guy's knees, and a rowboat came by and said, "Can I help you?" He said, "No, I made a deal with God." Then the water was up to his chest, and a helicopter came by and said, "Can I help you?" He said, "No, I made a deal with God." And a little later, he went drowned. It went right over his head. And he was walking around heaven. He ran to God. He said, "What happened?" God said, "I don't know. I sent a rowboat and a helicopter for you."
Golf's Fashion Center, Payne Stewart took a moment to give the Suns gorilla a tip on how to hit the driver, but no one drew more media attention than Cardinals quarterback Neil Lomax. The Cards' first game at Sun Devil Stadium is months away, but Lomax threw his first Phoenix touchdown pass, a long bomb to, yes, the Gorilla, who was wide open down in a gully near the second green. The winning team was headed by pro Tom Weisskopf. He and his partners teamed for a 20 under par 51. The Super Bowl games have seldom lived up to the Super Bowl hype, but Sunday's Denver-Washington matchup could be a close but high-scoring affair. That's if the players believe every down is the third one.
I think that every player on the team is looking like each individual has to play the best game they've ever played. And sure, I look at it as going out and that, for us to play well, especially at the quarterback position, you've got to play well to be dealing on offense. So, I'm taking it a lot on myself that, hey, I got to go out and play well. But I think that everybody on the team is looking at it that way.
And we have to wait till Friday to find out which way you vote, right?
Yeah, I don't want to tip my hand too early.
You don't want to give any extra hints out there.
Follow up the bookies, Oh, yeah.
All right, John. The weather with Stu Tracy still ahead on News 5.
And a report on trying to feed the hungry here in the Valley. You may not have noticed, but this was Interfaith Hunger Appeal Day in the Valley. As News 5's Bart Graves tells us, those fighting the battle have two major obstacles, public apathy and who needs it most.
Maybe this is a bit like preaching to the choir today, but anything that we can do to bring attention to this problem.
Apathy was very apparent at today's largely symbolic lunchless luncheon, demonstrating the unity of churches and government tackling the problem. As officials talked about the symbolism behind the lunchless lunch, down the street, the hungry lined up around the block for the free noontime meal provided by the St. Vincent de Paul Charity Dining Room. Officials here say donations of food have fallen off significantly since the holidays, but the demand hasn't.
The hunger problem is one that is often hidden. It's not the one you see out on the street, and I think the hunger problem is more sometimes than even the homeless. The homeless are visible. Many times there's remedies and solutions that you can address immediately.
Wilcox and other members of the Interfaith Council say there are enough agencies to take care of homeless hunger, but others say there isn't enough being done. And all the time you've been on the street, do you think there's enough agencies providing for food for you?
No, there's not.
You find yourself going hungry a lot?
Yeah, I do. A lot.
How do you feed yourself?
Any way we can. Hit the churches for donations and anything we can get.
It's fine to donate food at Christmas time or at the holidays, but people need it all year round. So this is even more of a problem than the homeless in my mind.
Fighting hunger is a big problem. Where to focus the fight is shaping up to be a bigger one. Bart Graves, News 5.
Well, looks like you have a lot of nice weather to talk about.
We have nice weather elsewhere besides just here in Phoenix.
That's nice.
Had a nice day. The humidity here in Phoenix today was nice. Ranged from a high of 53, got down as low as 13%. And checking the air quality, that was also nice with the carbon monoxide and ozone in the good range. Particulates moderate. High temperature in Phoenix today, 78 degrees. That's 12 degrees above normal, but that low temperature of 61 is 21 degrees above normal. That's a new record high minimum, and it breaks the old record by 8 degrees. The record high occurred in 1986, the record low in 1904. This hour at the airport, 66 degrees at 9 o'clock, humidity 21%, dew point 25 degrees, thermometer 30.14, it's holding steady. A little breeze from the east at 7 miles per hour, and it is generally cloudy throughout much of the west, but there's not much precipitation anywhere in the country. A few light showers are beginning to occur over Northern California and into the western parts of Washington and Oregon. They'll be spreading inland tomorrow. But it was a very mild day over the west despite all the cloudiness. Some record highs occurred. Astoria, Oregon, just ahead of that cold front, reached 60 for a record high. 76 at San Jose was a record. And very mild weather continued over the plains west of the stationary front with highs in the 50s up in Montana. Havre, record high today of 55 degrees. As we mentioned, very little precipitation in the country. Just a little snow shower activity in the east. Some snow, light snow, lingered over the upper Ohio Valley and into the lower Great Lakes. About an inch fell at Charleston, West Virginia. And lake effect snow advisories remain in effect over western New York near Lakes Erie and Ontario. They may get about 2 to 4 inches of snow tonight. The biggest problem in the country is probably the cold air in Florida. Growers are preparing for a hard freeze possible in that area tonight. Frost and freeze warnings posted throughout much of the state of Florida. 22 this morning at Tallahassee. Maybe that cold again tomorrow morning. Miami had a record low this this morning of 46 degrees. Coldest in the nation, though, was up at Lone Rock, Wisconsin, at 28 below. And the warmest this afternoon in California, it was at Monrovia and Santee at 82 degrees. High pressure continues to dominate the weather over Arizona. Clouds associated with this high pressure system are just high and thin, and they pose no threat of any precipitation. The blanketing effect from the clouds will keep the low temperatures unusually warm again in the morning. The variable clouds from the subtropics will remain over Arizona tomorrow, and it will be slightly cooler. And then skies will become cloudy, mainly over northern Arizona on Friday, variable cloudiness over the rest of the state, and there will be some additional cooling Friday and over the weekend. Holly Lake was the coldest this morning. Before the clouds arrived, it got down to 4 below, and the warmest this afternoon was here in Phoenix, 78 degrees. For Phoenix and the Valley for tonight, variable clouds, mild, near 50 at the airport, upper 30s in the cold spots. Tomorrow, mostly sunny in the morning, then increasing high clouds in the afternoon and slightly cooler, high in the mid-70s. And Friday, variable high clouds, some additional cooling, the high in the low 70s, and then just a little cooler each day on through the weekend.
But we're still holding up above that 70-degree mark.
We're up above normal, you bet.
Bill Rosen's movie review next on News 5.
Tonight, a fight film that may appeal to only a few.
Here's some of the stories we'll have for you tomorrow morning at 11:30 on News 5. Former Arizona Congressman John Rhodes is to meet with supporters about a possible candidacy in a recall election. Governor MECHAM, meantime, is to speak to a meeting of business executives, and the first round of the Phoenix Open gets underway.
Another case in point that sequels don't always work. Here's Bill Rose with tonight's movie review.
Any movie that tries to gross you out while making you laugh deserves some sort of a chutzpah award for having more nerve than good sense. And so it goes with Return of the Living Dead 2, that once again has the old Butterfingers Army brass dropping the ball and the drums of glop that'll leak into the graveyard and prove so loathsome that even the dearly deceased will want to get away. Right up front, you got to know that this movie's R rating is for some tummy-churning special effects, even though the intended audience won't mind that. But assuming you don't want to see what's in this briefcase, let's move on to some of the aforementioned humor, even though waltzing with a dead person doesn't seem like a lot of laughs. But wait till the TV gets turned on. A fright film with a sense of humor? Well, sort of. Well, the coming and going in this one, which on my scale of 1 to 4 roses, Return of the Living Dead 2, scares up half a rose for a few chuckles. But very few. I'm Bill Rose, News 5.
Well, I'm laughing.
That half rose smells suspiciously like a stinkweed.
Yeah, it does. And that's News 5 for a Wednesday evening.
The next News 5 report tomorrow morning at 11:30. Have a good night.